Today, I want to talk to you about what is borderline personality disorder. How does it normally present itself? And then I'll also talk about how it presents for me personally, because it does have some variance, but yet still having that sign and symptom affect you. So, first is intense fear of abandonment, even going to great lengths to avoid real or imagined neglect or rejection. And so that kind of means that you are going to feel desperate to try to have that person give you love and attention, and for them to constantly validate you so that you feel secure and safe. And I believe in most cases, people don't need to have so much validation. But with borderline personality disorder, you certainly do feel that need to have that constant validation. And with me, I push away so that then you can't hurt me if I push you away first. You can't reject me if I reject you first. But secretly really hoping inside that I'd be validated and that love would be promised to me again. So that's a tough one to try to break that cycle. And when you see yourself going down that road of, okay, well, I feel hurt, so I'm going to push away, realize, what are you really wanting? What is the core of that feeling or your actions? And then how can you, in a healthy way, work through them? So a lot of times it would be talking to your significant other or family member or friend, whoever it might be. Tell them what you're feeling and what your gut reaction is, so then you can, with them, kind of figure out how to work through that. Next is a pattern of unstable and intense relationships. And that can just be rocky, blowing hot and cold all the time. I'm on my second marriage, so that's definitely true for me, that I have intense relationships and it's unstable. Both have been very rocky and difficult, and it's only been that since I've gotten help that I realized that it's not just me that's causing the problems in the relationship, that it is that you probably attract people that are unhealthy themselves, or maybe they feel like they should fix you or they can control you. And so then that's an issue that you have to kind of work through on. Does that other person need help? Will they get help? Or is it a relationship you just need to get out of? And next is rapid changes in identity or self-image. So changing your goals for your life, or for planning for vacation or improvements on your house, changing that, and everything just seems fluid. You cannot have something concrete. And then your self-image, you might all of a sudden see yourself as bad or feel like you don't even exist. And so in a way, the best way I can describe it is that it feels like a curtain. A veil is lifted, and all of a sudden it feels like, oh my goodness, I'm the monster. Oh man, how could I not see that I'm driving everyone else crazy? So it does feel like a very sudden and extreme onset of realization, but that's just your own mood swing and self-image that gets weak and crumbly. Sorry. Next is periods of stress-related paranoia, and you can lose contact with reality for minutes to hours. And that, like I was saying before with the self-image, I feel like that kind of goes hand in hand. That you feel paranoid about who are you, who are the other people around you, what is true, and so it'll swing back and forth. Who's the dangerous person? And I think with borderline personality disorder, you will see that a lot, that it always feels like there's somebody you can't trust. You're trying to protect yourself or protect others, because if you're the real monster, well, then you don't want to hurt other people. So then trying to figure out, okay, then what do I do now? So Paranoia, I think, feeds a lot of things in borderline personality disorder, and a lot of things are just super connected, and so that's why I want to talk about how it presents, or how it presents for me, so you can kind of navigate that, because it was really confusing for me at first, because I really like things to be laid out for me in examples. Otherwise, I don't do well with complete abstract statements. And it felt like it was kind of abstract. This list I have is, I wrote it down from the Mayo Clinic. And so they actually had given some elaboration on it. And they also talked about some risks that you have if you have borderline personality disorder. Anyway, so next is impulsive, risky behavior. Now, this one I had a really hard time with, because they say it presents itself in gambling, shoplifting, risky sex, substance abuse. Now, personally, I have not done any of those, but I was raised in a Christian home, supposedly, and a homeschool environment, and we were not allowed to leave the property. My dad was a child abuser, so he would not let us leave because he didn't want anyone to find out. So we were super secluded. So there really wasn't that opportunity for substance abuse, or for gambling, or theft, or risky sex. So during those teen years, that's what helped protect me from what my impulsive behavior probably would be. And then as I got into my early 20s, mid 20s, I was able to use my own personal beliefs and values to help monitor and keep me in line, even though there was impulses, but that did not mean that I acted on them. And I feel like it's important for people to know that just because somebody you know has borderline personality disorder, that does not mean that they're doing everything on that list. They may have an urge, but like any human being, we are able to resist urges. And so I feel like there should be a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt there. But a conversation that you should have with your loved one anyway. How does borderline personality disorder affect them personally? What are their thoughts versus how they act? Next is suicidal threats, behaviors, or self-harm. So, if that's something that you struggle with, and that one I feel is like pretty straightforward. I personally used suicide as a pause button, that when I became overloaded mentally, that then I would be like, oh, okay, well then I can just kill myself. That's fine, and I would get overwhelmed quite a bit. If work was too stressful or I felt really hurt, I would just spend the rest of my day at work just planning on how I would kill myself that evening, because I wanted to honor my commitments and finish work, because I didn't want to let them down, but I still didn't want to be in the world anymore. Or with the self-harm, if somebody you're dating hurts you, or a sibling hurts your feelings, somebody hurts you, then using that to be, well, I'll hurt myself more, I'll hurt myself last, that becomes a coping mechanism that you typically don't have if you have BPD. So those different things that you just need to get to the core of, why am I doing these things? Why do I think about them? And when I learned about how I use suicide as a pause button, then I was able to find out how to start using a different pause button. And so for me, it's planning something. I need to plan how I'm going to take care of my kids. How am I going to change this situation? So a big fight with my husband, I will reevaluate the relationship. Try to weigh out, okay, well, whose fault is it? What's going on with that? And do I need to get myself out of this? What does this look like in 5 years? What does it look like for my kids? What is that environment? And so then typically I find that is a good idea to leave. So I start planning that, and it gives me a huge sense of power and calm. So I don't feel that need to just say, okay, well, I'm going to kill myself. Next is wide mood swings lasting hours to days. And another one, pretty straightforward, that can be intense happiness, irritability, anger, anxiety, shame. Just like I said before, feels like a veil is lifted and things all of a sudden look super different than they did yesterday or a few hours ago. And so that's really hard to navigate, and I still struggle with that, because when something does feel like a quick realization, even though that's probably paranoia and self-identity issues coming into place, it feels like the truth. So, just try to go back, remind yourself, okay, well, if it's you personally that you're struggling with and it's giving you shame or irritability, well, okay, let's look back in the last couple weeks. What have you done that was right? What have you done that was wrong? So that you can kind of get a baseline of, well, no, okay, actually, I'm fine. Or somebody else, okay, well, they did this to hurt my feelings, but actually, they typically get back to me on time, they're available for me. So you're able to really then gauge and kind of mellow out those mood swings that used to be super turbulent and would just all of a sudden then lead right to self-harm or suicidal behaviors. And next is ongoing feelings of emptiness. I feel like when you are constantly questioning the world and yourself, it is exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting, and you don't know what to believe. And that is really sad. And then when you also feel like you don't know who you are, then it makes it tough to have that sense of value in yourself. And if you don't have that sense of value, then you do feel really empty. So that one is a very difficult one. Or if you feel like you did a bad job, they say how you have devaluation with yourself with borderline personality disorder as well. That if you did a bad job today, you did not handle stress well, then you feel like you were all bad. And that's not true. And that's something that you have to constantly have conversations in your mind about, okay, well, I did this bad, but yesterday I did really good, and it's probably just a lack of sleep. Okay, let's take it easy today so that then I can get better rest tomorrow, and then it can be a much better day tomorrow. And you still, I feel feelings of emptiness while I'm trying to deal with being overly tired or feeling like I did a bad job. Next, we have inappropriate, intense anger, such as, losing your temper, getting in physical fights. I have done both. I used to get in physical fights with significant others, and that gets ugly, and you know that that's not the way that you're supposed to be or that a relationship should be, and in a way kind of provoking. You want them to hit you because you want to feel like dirt is something that I felt like different times. And that is something that I had to just decide that no, you are not going to do that anymore. That there's just no place. There's no place for it. So walk away. And I mean, at first it had to be like, you walk away, you go cut yourself, but do not lay a hand on somebody else. So in a way, it can be kind of unhealthy to try to your path to break different cycles, but that's how I had to do it because I felt really lost, and I was so mad and it was wanting to come out physically so bad that then hurting myself was a better thing. And so those are the 9 signs and symptoms. If you have 5 of those, then you count as being borderline, and you should definitely seek some therapy. I went to my local healthcare provider and I told them that I was concerned about my mental health, and then they were able to get me connected to a therapist, and then my therapist was able to help walk me through what is the best course of therapy for me. And so that was really great. But if you're really scared about such things, there are plenty of hotlines, super easy to find online too, to just talk to people. Start getting brave enough to say, I think I have a problem. And then they can kind of help build up your confidence too. So even if you're really shy or ashamed, I think even a hotline could probably be beneficial for you, and especially if you're dealing with some suicidal thoughts or self-harm. They are absolutely there to help. I have not ever used a hotline, but my therapist told me that everyone who is going to school for being a counselor or therapist, that they do that to help build learning experience. And so it's actually something that they benefit from if you call. You are helping somebody get closer to their career if you do use that. So she said, never, never, ever hesitate with calling hotlines. And she said, and you may have the assumption that whoever calls has like a handful of pills, they're ready to kill themselves. And she said that is absolutely not the truth. It's just people going through a tough time. And then that's a perfectly appropriate time to call them, is if you're just having a hard time and you just need somebody to listen. So strongly suggest utilizing your healthcare provider or a hotline. Now, I told you how I wrote down some complications that you would experience if you have borderline personality disorder, and so you will get you'll have a lot of different problems in your life. So some of the things you might experience is repeated job changes or losses, not completing an education, and that I am guilty of. Things were pretty crazy when I was in high school with my family, my dad getting arrested, my mom going back to work, and everyone just kind of parting ways, and it was really fend for yourself, and I wasn't the greatest student, so things got really hard, and so I dropped out. And I've just now been able to get to a certain point to where now I am working to complete my GED. And there's a lot of school and a lot of tests involved now, but I am close to finishing up all my studies. So then I'll be able to be taking all the different tests to see if this is something that I pass and I get. So it stinks because the not finishing high school brings a lot of shame, but knowing that if you do get better, that then you get mentally stronger and you're not fighting those daily mental challenges. You're not constantly battling what's true, who are you, and who are the people around you, so that you're finally strong enough to go and take care of some of the things that you really want to do. But I digress. Multiple legal issues. If you are gambling or you are shoplifting, that's going to be some issues. Or breaking out in physical fights will cause you some problems. Conflict-filled relationships. You can attract those abusive partners. Or perhaps if you're the really intense one, perhaps you are attracting people who want to be abused in a way. Not want, but that's comfortable, that's normal because of how they grew up. So either way, unhealthy relationships. If you have unchecked, untreated BPD, you are going to have difficult relationships and probably, in most cases, abusive. Unplanned pregnancies, physical fights, car accidents, again, just kind of goes with that anger and that risky behavior. An attempted or completed suicide. That is a real risk. Something else my therapist had told me was that people who do complete suicide don't necessarily mean to. It can be an accident. I had some attempts, and I've just chalked it up to I am really bad at killing myself because I don't have the guts to do it in more efficient ways, I guess. So that's something that you run the risk of. Maybe you have done so many attempts, but eventually you do get it. You do end up killing yourself. So there is some other things that you could be dealing with on top of borderline personality disorder, and so definitely worth talking to somebody about. Depression, substance abuse, anxiety disorders, eating disorders, bipolar disorders, PTSD, ADHD, or there is some other personality disorders. So that's kind of an overview of what it is. The root cause, that is unknown, but they do believe that some of it is genetic. And the thing that I think is the real kicker is if you have a parent who is borderline, then not only does it become genetic, but it becomes environmental. So my mom, I believe, has undiagnosed borderline personality disorder, and she has some issues, and so that became environmental as well as a genetic. So you would never really be able to pinpoint what it is, and that makes it really tough for psychiatrists to find out, okay, well, where does this start? How can you prevent it? And yeah, it's tough, and it's sad to know that you could be creating an environment then perhaps for your child or children that would be unhealthy. And when I realized I was starting to have some issues and I was struggling with life with babies, I realized, okay, this isn't everyone else, this is me. And feeling empty a lot. And depression medication wasn't clearing it up. It wasn't taking care of it completely. That's when I decided, okay, there must be something wrong. I need help, because I've seen what growing up with an unhealthy parent, parents actually, in me and my siblings' case, but I've seen what that's like, and I will be danged if my kids grow up in an unstable, unhealthy environment. So it's a really good driver for me. But anyway, so those are the different signs and symptoms, and kind of talked over about how it is also genetic and environmental, and what you can be at risk for. So thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next week.